So my wife and I have two kids, a nearly 3-year-old and a 18-month-old. We won a cruise to the Bahamas for two, meaning the kids couldn't go. My mother volunteers to watch the kids. Great, it's all settled. We're going to get away for a week and have some time for ourselves. As the date approaches, Mom starts talking about having the kids at her house for the week. We told her we were under the impression that she was going to be at our house. All the kids' stuff is here. Our home is a single story and east to track the kids in. It's significantly closer to all of their doctors for emergencies. We're talking 20 minutes versus an hour and a half. And our house is baby-proofed, where hers is not. So we told said we really felt they should be at our house. And if that didn't work for her, we would make other arrangements. She said our house was fine, but days later says she would like to be at her house because my siblings who still live with her could help watch the kids. These are the same siblings who we were told needed to be instructed on how to be nice to toddlers, which is why we weren't invited to Thanksgiving. No thanks. We'll get you support through our own channels, people you know and like who can pop in to get you relief and help out. We leave for our trip, though, as we are showing Mom where everything is and going over food and snacks. She's more interested in playing with the kids than learning where the diapers are. So day one in the boat, my wife uses the boat's internet to do a video call to check on the kids. All seems fine, but my mother tells her not to call again for the rest if the trip because it may upset the children. My wife doesn't tell me about that part of their convo right away, but as soon as she does, we call her back. When she answers, she's at her house with the kids, and you can see brand new kids' apparel and paraphernalia in the background. I asked her what happened, and she tells me she was really sick and thinks she got norovirus. What the hell? Super nauseous. It was all she could do to call her brother, who lives 5 minutes from me, to have him pack the kids in my wife's car and drive an hour and a half to her house. So, you were so sick that you couldn't watch the kids, but you could drive home in a car that wasn't yours and endanger kids that aren't yours in the event that you pass out or spontaneously start vomiting while on the freeway, potentially killing our children. Why didn't you call the list of people who said they'd come help? They had set aside parts of their weeks to come out and support with their time and money. Do they even know the kids aren't home? Do you know one person is staying in a hotel to be 10 minutes from you in case of emergency? Now they're an hour and a half from home and none the wiser for what's happening. The first thing she says is she really was sick. I never accused her of not being sick. I doubted it, but I never said it. Then she tells me how dare I judge her for her decisions, and she doesn't have to justify herself to me, and that she doesn't have to watch my kids. I told her to pack my kids up in the car and take them home. Someone else was going to watch them. When she dropped the kids off, she was nasty to their new caretakers and sulked. As soon as I knew the kids were safe, I sent her a message saying she clearly didn't respect us as parents. Doesn't matter how many kids she raised. These are ours, and she sure as hell needed to justify herself and check in with us if she was too sick to do her job. We have the right to know what's going on with our kids, and any sane person would call and ask us what we wanted them to do before packing the kids up and taking them away. If the roles were reversed, she would have absolutely lost her mind, and I know because I've seen it, and that she didn't need to see the kids again if she was going to go that far out of her way to undermine us and then act like a spoiled child to family and friends when she gets caught. Then, next day, she replied to the message saying she didn't realize she did anything that was that far out of expected parameters. Yeah, her words. And that she recognized that parents had their own rules, and she would have to learn ours. Never did anything resembling sorry come across in that message or any other. We blocked her on social media and haven't spoken to her since. I never expected to encounter a wild Karen at the supermarket, but there she was, pacing up and down the cereal aisle, her arms flailing wildly as she shouted into her phone. I didn't want to get involved, but as I reached for a box of Cheerios, she bumped into me, causing me to drop my phone. "Watch where you're going, young lady," she screeched, her eyes bulging with anger. I picked up my phone and tried to apologize. But before I could say a word, she started ranting about how I was too young to be out shopping alone and how my parents must be neglectful for not supervising me properly. I was taken aback by her hostility, but I tried to keep calm. "I'm 25 years old, ma'am," I said, trying to sound as polite as possible. 25. You're just a child. Where are your parents? I demand to speak with them immediately. I could feel my blood starting to boil. Who did this woman think she was, telling me what to do? I'm an adult, and I don't need anyone's permission to go grocery shopping, I snapped back. At that moment, the woman's son, who looked to be about 10 years old, came running over. "Mom, can we go get some ice cream now?" he asked, tugging at her sleeve. "Not now, dear. Mommy's busy dealing with this entitled brat," she said, glaring at me. I rolled my eyes. "Oh, I'm the entitled one. You're the one causing a scene in the middle of the supermarket." The woman's face turned red with rage. "How dare you speak to me like that? I demand to speak to your manager." I couldn't help but laugh. "I don't work here, lady. And even if I did, I wouldn't be your personal servant." The woman huffed and puffed, but eventually stormed off with her son in tow, muttering under her breath about kids these days and lack of respect. As I continued my shopping, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride at having defeated a wild Karen, but it wasn't the first time I'd dealt with entitled people. Growing up, I was always the odd one out. I was a bookworm who loved nothing more than spending hours lost in a good novel. My parents were supportive, but they didn't really understand my interests. They were more focused on my younger brother, who was a star athlete and the pride of the family. At school, I was the target of bullies who thought I was too nerdy and quiet to stand up for myself. But I learned to fight back in my own way. I honed my wit and sarcasm, using them as weapons to disarm my tormentors. In college, I discovered a passion for social justice. I joined a group that fought against discrimination and inequality, and I found a sense of purpose in standing up for what I believed in. Now, as a young adult, I'm still fighting the good fight, whether it's against a wild Karen in the supermarket or a system that perpetuates injustice. I won't back down, and I'll always have my sarcasm and wit to see me through. I used to work at a plastic company, let's say. It was a quickly growing company. I worked in logistics. At first, everything was good. I was in charge of scheduling and coordinating trucks to pick items up from warehouses, then deliver them to businesses. Across North America, over 40 loading docks, 400-plus clients, 7 warehouses, etc. Not a small operation. The total work for scheduling was split between me and another guy. Then, the manager would handle the problems. We used a Google account that was shared between 20-30 people. Calendars with docs times, customs paperwork, BOL packing slip. Everything that our department did was on this one account, and it had an awful password. Basically, it was Plastic Company 1. I mentioned a couple of times that we should change it, but got shot down. Keep in mind, there was no backup. Why bother? It's a computer. It won't mess it up. About a year in, and I started to get to know a coworker. Let's call him Dave. Dave and I were talking at one point, and we got onto men's issues, suicide rates, injuries on the job, etc. I had never heard this stuff before and was intrigued. I had always bought the narratives. Anyway, the manager overheard us at one point. Little did I know she was a pretty staunch feminist, all men bad kind of feminist. She was also married with 1 kid. This will come later. I didn't think anything of it. A bit later, the manager started giving me tasks and talked to me about possible promotions. "If you do X and Z for me, I'll consider you for regional manager when we expand." I did these tasks over and over. She kept giving me more and more work. At one point, I walked to her desk to see her scrolling up and down through an empty spreadsheet. She turned around and handed me a pile of papers. "I need you to transcribe this into Excel by tomorrow." Fast forward a year and the company is still growing. We've got more work than ever. Me, especially, since the manager had realized I would just do a lot of her work for her. It got to the point where I was working late into the night, off the clock. We started an on-call system, which wound up with me always being on call. Things were getting bad. Then I slipped. I mentioned my boyfriend in passing to a coworker. He gave me a look, then left to talk to the manager. Things got hellish after that. Manager started to write me up over job performance, over and over. She would pull me into a room, tell me I was doing great, then have me sign a paper. Little did I know, she was preparing to fire me. At this point, I'm starting to fall apart. The long hours without pay, the massive workload, a lot of personal things were all taking a toll. The talks with the manager got weird. She would compare me to her husband or son, then get emotional, acting as if I was them in the room with her. She would try to argue feminist talking points with me like I was some sort of MRA strawman punching bag since she had overheard me and Dave. My coworkers were told not to interact with me, effectively isolating me. It was obvious the manager had a chip on her shoulder. One day I told the manager that I wanted to record the talk because I was concerned about the nature of the discussions. That was her last straw. She rushed out of the room, came back and said I had threatened her and needed to leave immediately. I was shocked. I gathered my things and went home. Later, one HR contacted me and absolutely refused to discuss anything on the record. They did all the bad things you can imagine. We promise if you say you quit, we'll make sure you get unemployment. I need to talk to you on the phone without recording. I won't do this over email. If you sign this, don't need to read it. We'll make sure that you get your unclaimed PTO. Shocker. All of it was a lie. I didn't give them anything, and they refused to discuss further. When I was supposed to get my last check, the same day it got reversed. Fun fact, an employer can just take your checks back out of your account, and it's up to you to fight it. They didn't stop there, though. They drained my accounts, leaving me with like $50 to live on. Over $3,000 they took. A normal check was a little over $1,000. And I just let it all happen. I didn't fight too much over it. I was in a bad spot in my own life. I had barely lost a dog, had to move under extreme duress into a rushed situation, and was barely getting any sleep. I was eventually given notice of official termination, little change of unemployment since the manager had documented our performance reviews so many times. I got cleaned up, found a different job. I was bitter for a long time about it. One day, I thought, wonder if they ever changed that account password. No, nobody ever had. The entire department was all in this one account. And I had the password, which meant I could control it. So, I signed up for a VPN. I started by connecting to the account from Europe, then changed the recovery details, phone number, address, security questions, etc. Then I waited a couple of weeks. Nothing changed. It seemed like nobody noticed. Next, I went to a public area and got connected using a laptop with a clean Linux install. VPN connected, then connected through Tor. Then I logged into the account from China. I deleted everything, and I mean everything, all the calendars. All the documents, 40+ gigs of data gone forever. I left several notes appearing to be from the manager's husband demanding a divorce. I left notes from the manager's son telling her he hated her guts and always had. The next week I went back and deleted the account. It was unrecoverable for them. The entire operation screeched to a halt, and the executives had only one person to look at. Logistics manager with severe family problems. 2 months later, I checked in on the manager. She moved from the city where she'd lived for 15+ years with her family to some apartment over an hour away and had gotten a lower-paying job at a much smaller company. She wasn't listing her marriage on Facebook anymore. Her family didn't even appear on the friends list. She wasn't smiling in her pictures anymore either.